Hello, Internet.
Here we go again.
He's going
right
to love
off the bat.
Every time.
Okay.
I am the pastor.
Hello, everybody. I am the prince.
And we are here with another edition of The Pastor.
The Pastor and the Prince.
The Prince.
It's a podcast that you can invite everybody to
Invite
listen
all
to.
your friends.
You'll be entertained. You'll be annoyed.
If you're watching us on one of those things that say subscribe, press subscribe.
Yep. And if you've got ideas for us, remember to email us at podcast@yahogo.org, or you can get us on any of our other episodes. You can check us out at podcast.yahogo.org.
That is correct. And if you need help spelling it, it's YAHOGO.org.
YAH.
That's spelled YAHOGO.org.
Yeah.
Prince, let's
go.
get into this topic. This is one that's, first of all, some of you don't know, but I'm just going to share this with you. I'm in leadership. Dun, dun, dun.
Wow.
And I say that lightly, but I'm also having a little fun with this. Not only are we in leadership, and there I go with using those royal we's again. Some of you that are a part of the church, some of you have probably heard some of our older speakers. Some of them are no longer with us, so we would say those are our legacy speakers. They would use the term we. We are in, and they're referring to the royal we. And what it means by the royal we is rather than saying I, they'll use the term we. And I believe they did that to show that we're all together in this thing that we're doing. Anyway, I digress. I'm sitting in leadership not only at the church, but I also sit in leadership at my job. I'm one of the information technology directors at my current position. And it's a great thing. I love it because I see it as a developmental path for others. That's what I learned that leadership is. But what I'm finding out, Prince, everybody don't see it that way. So this is one of them topics that it gets. I hate to use the term, it gets my goat, but it gets my goat when they don't understand that, listen, leadership is about people.
Maybe in another episode, we'll find out what all the quips that Pastor Tim is.
Quips.
It gets my goat. I'm going to have to write that one down because I got to ask you about that later.
Oh, boy. I think it's the goat is if you have a beard, and that's the part that it gets. So when you grab a goat's beard and you tug on it, it actually hurts. For those of you that have naps, but only certain people will understand that one. So
the word goat has been embedded in our society thanks to our most recent generations, because now goat means greatest of all time.
Greatest of all time.
It's an acronym now.
Yes, it is. You know who made that term? Who actually coined the term?
Was it Michael Jordan?
No. Well, he's one of the goats.
Okay.
Yeah, but I heard this on an award show, and I'll just throw it out there. My former boss, he was the one that coined the phrase.
Your former boss?
My former boss.
Was it
and I don't mind saying my former boss in this case when I tell you who it was.
Was it?
I'll give you one more guess, and then we got to dive into this show.
He's one who has the fruit on on
all of the devices. Yeah, Dr. Dre. That's correct. Yes, it was Dr. Dre that actually coined that phrase. And I believe that he had coined the phrase for a dear friend of his, LL Cool J.
Wow.
So this is what happens when you watch award shows.
I know, right?
You're sitting there doing, I thought I wasn't listening,
stuff.
but hey, I learned something new when I was listening to my old boss. But Dr. Dre.
Speaking of learning something new,
yes,
years ago, there are two things that actually shaped the way I think about those things. One of those things is actually thinking about what we're thinking about, because
about thinking. I remember that book. Go ahead.
Exactly. But this quote says that a new mind stretched by a new idea never regains its original dimension.
You know where I first heard that?
Where?
Statement with a motivational speaker by the name of Les Brown.
I've heard of him.
Yes.
Yep, I've heard of Les Brown.
Yes. Do you remember where that quote originated?
No, I don't.
You know what? And it's funny. I'm going to say that I forgot where it originated, but he actually mentioned who he gave credit to. But what I'm learning from the quote investigator, that oftentimes you know,
tell you about that
people.
later.
Yeah, that's another episode for another show.
If you saw the big smile that was on Pastor Tim's face just now when I he just really gets into that. He gets into that the way those in my personal circle know I get into learning about a new term, like the actual word and how it sounds.
So you're a wordsmith type of person.
I'm not a wordsmith.
Okay, let's go ahead and let's dive back into the show.
I'm a word aficionado.
Oh,
I love the way
aficionado.
words look. I love the way they sound. I love the way they feel when you say them.
Do you receive the word of the day from dictionary.com?
I used to. I don't.
It's
I'm
a
gonna have to get back to that. But
I got a joke for you.
Right before I talk
Right
about
before
the
you talk
second quote.
about, I got a joke for you.
Yes, what's the joke? Uh-oh.
I got a new word for you. Guess what that word is?
I'm afraid. Go ahead.
Plagiarism.
Plagiarism. Whoa.
That's a nice word.
Yeah. Well, it's a nice word that can turn ugly.
Really fast.
Yeah, plagiarism.
And so can that joke because I borrowed it from someone else.
Okay, so the second quote that I was talking about that actually changed my way of thinking is one that was attributed to John Maxwell. It says that he who thinks he leads but has no followers is only taking a walk.
Yeah.
So
I think I remember reading that quote in one of his books.
Yeah, I think when you talk
how do you
about
know that you're a leader?
Yeah,
when you look behind you and you have people.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things is that I think in this episode where we talk about leadership, I think one of the things is that you have to wonder who is following.
But wait, there's another twist that we're going to add to this. I'm gonna grab into your word lexicon and pull this one out. Really, where this discussion started was the dichotomy between management and leadership. Yeah. That's what got my goat.
There we go.
Because now,
back to getting his goat.
There is a difference. There is a distinction between management and what a manager does and what a leader does. And today, I'm just going to
dive into it.
We're going to dive into it, but this will be a quick dive. And I'm telling you that the dive that we're going to do today is just going to be on the surface. Okay. And I'm probably going to rant more than some of the information that we'll provide, and we're going to be providing nuggets along the way. Go ahead.
Well, I'll stop you from ranting too long right away because we got about 3 minutes.
Don't you say we got a commercial?
A little message in 3 minutes. So you got 3 minutes.
So I got 3 minutes. Okay, well, I'm going to guide you into it this way. First question I want to ask is, what does it mean to manage? Because this is the first of all, when you're defining something or you need to understand something, there's this little thing called a dictionary. Dictionary's your friend, folks. Dictionary's your friend.
It is.
First thing I want to take a look at is this word called manage. It just means this. Here's one definition of the word. There's going to be multiple senses of the word, but you'll be able to pick this up just straight out of your local dictionary. It says this: to succeed in doing something, especially something that needs a lot of effort or skill. That's one of the leading definitions. I'm not going to say the only, but this is leading, and this is from the Macmillan Dictionary. Now, for those of you that are curious, where does the pastor, what does he like to go? One resource that I like to go to for dictionary references, it's not the only source, but it's one of many sources that I like. There's a website called onelook.com. Onelook.com. Right. And for those of you that's curious to know, and most of you are going to say, why don't you just Google it? You're right. Googling is going to give you an answer as well. What onelook.com does is, for those of you that are into library studies, it gives you a collection of all of the dictionaries on one site. So when you type in the one word manage, not only do you get it from Merriam-Webster, you get it from Oxford, you get it from Macmillan. So all of the different flavors of dictionaries that they have out there, you'll get your word at onelook.com. So this is just one rendering of that word. Another way to look at manages is to succeed in doing something annoying or wrong. And some managers, they succeed in doing annoying, which is what they'll do to their personnel, or they'll show them how to do something totally incorrectly. And then here's another one, and there's a whole lot more, but I just wanted to hit these first top three here. To succeed in doing something that you do not really want to do. When most people go to work, They don't like working.
Right.
And it could be because the people that are managing them, I don't know. But one of the quick things that I take away from this, and I know I'm about to run out of time. What is the leading word that I see here? Succeed.
Yes.
So we're trying to get to somewhere, or we're trying to go somewhere. We're trying to get something done.
Exactly.
In some cases, right or wrong. So you can see the manager part of me ranting on this piece. The other thing is that word do, and we both know that the word do is what? A verb.
Action. Yep.
Shows action. It shows that I'm trying to go from here to there. If I have lots of water, a gallon of water, or 5 gallons, or 10 gallons, or 20 gallons of water, or you can even say 20 gallons of dirt, and leadership says in order to build, you need to move the 20 pounds of dirt from location A to location B. The manager comes in and executes on the vision.
And there's another version of there's another twist on the word succeed.
Ooh.
Because when you succeed, there's another way to look at it, that you are coming after something. So sometimes the manager actually picks up where maybe
someone else left off, or they're coming to repair, or to reconstruct.
Yep.
And in some cases, some managers have to come in as a demolition team. You know what? This is one thing that I have learned about being in management and understanding the difference between management and leadership. And I'm going to tell you what leadership is. I guess I'll be able to get into that after the break because I'm getting close. Something tells me as I'm looking at my partner here, the prince is saying, you need to wrap it up. And I knew he was going to say that. I'll talk about leadership on the other side of the break. But what I've learned about some managers is they have to come in as a demolition crew to tear down all of those things that the previous team may have done so that they can start building anew or fresh.
Wow. With that in mind, we'll be right back right after this.
Right after this.
You're listening to The Pastor and the Prince. This is a podcast that you can invite everybody to. We're talking about all the human issues.
All life's issues.
Yep, everything.
Ideas.
We've got The Pastor and the Prince podcast actually features Pastor Tim and myself, Prince Lyle. So
Prince Lyle, that's correct.
You were going to talk about leadership before we went.
Yes, I was going to talk about leadership, but I thought that I'd do a quick little plug in for the Prince. Some of you are probably saying, I know that voice from somewhere, and you're going to hear that voice a little bit more in our season 3 when we launch the Prince podcast. He's going to go solo, so we'll talk about that some more. He's showing some leadership.
That's what happens when you kick you out. It's just like you feel like you're in the parents' home.
Well, you know what's interesting?
Like, you can't stay here.
It's interesting you mention it. It's not a kick out.
And as soon as you leave, they're like, you can come back at any time. And you turn around 5 seconds later, and they've made your room. Parents are not saying you can come back at any time. Oh no, what they're saying is, please leave so I can make this gym, or I can make this sewing room, or I need an office. I want an office with a door, and your door is about to be my office. That means that they've been eyeing your room since you got here.
Yes, since you got here. Matter of fact, when you got here, they asked the question, why did I lose my space? Why couldn't you lose your space?
Right.
But that's a whole nother issue altogether.
I am so elated to be on all of these episodes, and by now,
yes, I'm elated that you are on this episode with me, and I think you said that we have one more season that we'll do together, and then we're gonna branch out and we're gonna widen this net. See, we're going to make this thing so much larger because I'm going to tell you, the Prince has so much more to share than what little old me has.
Oh, my goodness.
He's been a professional. Now tell me this, before you shifted into podcasting.
Before I tell you that, I want to mention something you just said,
Before you shifted.
He said, I have more to say than he does. When have you ever known a pastor to be speechless or without words?
I didn't say speechless.
Always has more to say.
I never said
always
speechless.
Has more to say.
That was a setup to talk about your success. and this was something I want to ask you.
Yes,
How long were you in radio before you made the shift into podcasting?
I was a little kid and I ended up being in radio for 30 years.
30? Yeah. That must mean either you're very old or you started at 3?
I started at a very young age.
Yeah, right.
A very ripe young age.
Make a note. You can't work until you're at least 13.
Tinder,
so you know that Tinder was not too tender.
Back then they were making us work long before it was legal to work, you know.
Kind of like the cotton fields. All right, we'll save
that's
that
another
one.
show.
Another show. And I said all of that because that's basically doing leadership right there. That's leadership 101. Leadership is what? Looking at the vision. It's providing mentorship for those that need it. You'll notice that when we left on the break, when I was talking about managers, some managers have to come in and they have to tear down all that was established in that particular group, because when they came in, if they were this type of leader, and this is one of the things that I'm going to pat myself on the back, one of the things that I found as a leader is one of the things that they want you to become, or one of the things that you are by nature of your title, is a change agent. You have to be able to go in to an office, a work site. You need to have the ability to assess what is going on. You need to be able to have the skill to analyze and interpret the information that you're receiving. Because keep in mind, most of the time when you're coming in as a manager, you're going to have someone that's above you, whether that's the C-suite. And for those of you that's wondering, well, what is the C-suite? Why do people keep referring to it as a C-suite? The CEO, the CFO, the COO, the CMO, the CRO. Either way, it's somebody that's sitting at the very, very top, and that that represents you can call it the executives or the senior executives or the partners, depending on where you come in. Then you're going to have those that are right below them. You can look at them as the foot soldiers to carry out what executive leadership wants. Well, when you now start talking about management, the management is really going to be that guy that's sitting in between. He's taking orders from the top, making sure that things that's at his level and down, is executed. So for us, we have to have that ability to take the information that has been given to us, analyze it, interpret it, then take a look at the talent that's at the boots on the ground, if you will, doing the actual work and making sure that it's getting done. First thing that you're looking for is do I have the right people in the right places? That's what a manager does.
Now, let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
If you have the people, if you answer the question, do I have the people in the right places?
Or do I have the right people in the right places?
If you have the right people in the right places.
For example, a center may not, if you're talking basketball, a center may not make a good guard.
Not SINNER.
Oh, yeah, that's
true. So, he's the pastor. I have to make sure I let you know what words he's using. I'm glad that you
said that. Yes. Center versus center may not make a good forward, or they may not make a great guard. Then again, they may. I don't know. I mean, as you can say, the game has changed a lot, but there's certain roles that doesn't work in certain capacities, and that's the change that I'm trying to bring to light.
So what happens when you have the right person in the right place?
Wonderful.
And you need to know how long they need to be in that place. Like, is there an expiration date for that person being in the right place?
No, there's no expiration date. Now what you want to do is go to that individual. And this is where it becomes a people thing. It's all about the personnel. What do you want out of this particular track that you're currently in now, or are you trying to go somewhere else?
Okay.
Because as a manager, you have to think this is all about people development.
Okay.
You'll get the best out of anybody when they're doing something that makes sense to them and is taking them to their goals, is taking them to their dreams, is taking them to their aspirations.
Okay, I got another question then. Okay, so what about what happens if that person is doing everything in their aspirations? They aspire to be the best. They have reached their capacity, and
go ahead.
So once they reach their capacity, they still are not recognizing that they've reached their pinnacle, but you've realized it, and they're still trying and trying and trying. They're doing their best, but their best has evolved into not being good enough. What do you do?
Okay, so you see a lot of that now. I can say I saw a lot of that with the technological shift.
Yeah, so what do you do?
Unfortunately, in cases like that, the best you will be able to do is to encourage them. One of two approaches that I've seen with this. One, you can have them shift and to stay where they are and try to do something with remedial training. So, for example, I've noticed with older people, and this I've learned with my consulting business, and I've also seen it in the office as well, the best you're going to be able to do is to find out what they were good at using the analog method and see if there is a way to bridge the gap with digital. If there is no way, shape, or no way possible to get them to make that shift, then there's a larger discussion that you'll have to ask, which is, are you sure you want to continue in this particular field? Because the field has changed. The field is not going to bend to you. You're going to end up having to build to it.
All right. I'm going to take it a little further. What happens if that person is adamant that they can stay there and you recognize that they are not a good fit anymore?
Unfortunately, at some point, whether it's that manager or the one behind them, they may find themselves out of employment.
Right.
That's the reality of where we are today.
Yeah.
It's easy for something. And I could tell you this from an automation perspective, people are complaining about it, and they're complaining about what robots are able to do. But unfortunately for us, that's the age that we're living in.
Absolutely. We're running out of time, but I want to tell
so
you,
we'll have to hit it
I want
on
to
the
plug
other hour.
something real in there.
Go ahead.
I want to say that the good advice that I would say after being a manager and being a leader in several different capacities, I did higher ed, I did radio, so forth. Even with leadership in my band and, all of that stuff, I would say that Jeff Bezos's interview comes to mind. Jeff Bezos was the
Jeff Bezos. Some will say Bezos, some will say
Okay.
Bezos.
All right.
Either way,
I pronounced
fine.
it differently, but he says that
Southern
it's called.
accent.
Yeah, that's what it is. Coming from New Orleans, he says that the concept is compassionate leading.
Leading with compassion.
When you're leading with compassion, you take the player out of the game, because sometimes the player wants to play,
True.
and they don't realize they've either been injured or they reached their capacity or they reached their age limit or something has happened. So the best thing to do is constantly evaluate yourself so that you can do that leading with compassion on your own before it's done on your behalf.
On your behalf, yeah. And oftentimes a good leader will let you know where you're at in the scheme of the larger picture. This is what a good manager would do. Now,
and hopefully not at the very end where you say, listen, you might want to think about doing something else,
or
and you might want to think about doing something else tomorrow
because
and here's a little pastel sheet of paper for you.
Yeah, well, let me just call it
They
what
used
it
to
is.
call it a
The
pink
slip.
slip.
It's called a pink slip.
Exactly.
Or it's those words that no one wants to hear. You have been
Right.
laid off. I've heard that multiple times in my career. And that's one of those things. It's one of those realities that you really have to prepare for. You know what? That reminds me of a good resource for anyone that wants to just have some good resource information. Now, some of the books that I've read, I'm just going to give you this disclaimer right now. Some of the books that I have read are not books that people might think a pastor should read, but I can tell you, if you're in business, I'm going to recommend this book to you because I've recommended this book to others.
That's why we have this podcast.
Yeah, you can find it on
things
Amazon.
That you would say as a pastor, I can give you a pass for saying it on this podcast. So.
Oh no, I don't need a pass in this particular case, as I've shared with you on the
shots
first.
Fired.
No, it's not a shot fired. It's actually love fired. And this is one, I'm glad that he says that, and that's good for him.
And we're gonna get this together because we're running out of time, and we're gonna wrap it up.
No, we're about to wrap it up. But the reason I'm saying that, as I shared on that first podcast, the two are inseparable. You can't have one without the other, because if you can, that will explain some of the foolishness that's going on in the church world now, but I'm not going to go there. The book that I'm referencing is called Business Without the Manure. Now, the problem is I've used
Business
the term
Without the Bull.
Oh, well, he wants to say bull. I'm just going to use
I won't say the whole
manure.
word.
But the author's name, his name is Jeffrey James. Jeffrey James, Business Without the Manure.
And his name is spelled Jeffrey like the English London way to spell it.
You might want to spell
Joffrey.
You might want to spell it that way.
Joffrey.
Go ahead and spell it for them.
Geoffrey, James.
And then James, James.
Yep.
49
Samaj
secrets and
backwards.
shortcuts you need to know. One of the chapters that he go through, and this is not a chapter book that you read cover to cover.
Mm-hmm.
You read it based on what's happening to you or what you're seeing happening in the office.
Like a daily workbook.
You could call it a workbook.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even call it a daily workbook. It's one of those workbooks that I would call it a situational workbook. If you see certain things happening in the office, you can refer to this manual to get some insight on what's about to happen. Well, how did I stumble upon this book? I was at the bookstore. I saw the book. I had recently been laid off. I thumbed through the book, and little did I know, some of the things that I saw in the office, the author talked to, oh, looks like we got to wrap it up for the commercial break.
Yeah.
Oh, boy, I tell you, these commercials, they say they pay the bills, but I have not seen anything in my pocket.
These commercials allow us to continue to talk to you. That's right. They give us permission to talk to you. So what we're going to do is we'll be back to talk about leadership and wrap up a few things, give you a few little pearls of wisdom from the pastor, Pastor Tim himself, when we come back after this. Listen, you've been listening to the Pastor and the Prince podcast.
And the Prince.
That's right. And you can find us you can find our other episodes if you just stumbled upon this one. You can find our other episodes at podcast.yahogo.org. And please, we'd love to hear from you. Love to hear your ideas. Love to hear your criticisms and your praises and all of that stuff at podcast@yahogo.org.
It's spelled YAHOGO.org. And the first word is podcast. Matter of fact, let me put this in there as well.
Go ahead.
Because there's some people that'll say, well, you forgot to put in the www. The only reason why you would do a www is if the author of the site put that in there as an explicit. Everything else, believe it or not, it doesn't always have to begin with www. Sometimes you'll hear people say podcast, similar to what we're doing, podcast.yahogo.org. That first word in the beginning just means that it's a subdomain.
Gotcha.
That's all that means. And for those of you that are used to having subdirectories, you get the idea of what a subdomain is.
Subdivisions,
there you go.
where people
Subdivision,
live. Yeah.
Or we refer to them as what? The suburbs.
Yeah.
Bingo.
And,
Subdivision, suburbs.
And we don't want this to be so corny it becomes subpar. So I want to tell you that if you're interested in that episode, we are doing an episode where I can pick Pastor Tim's brain and talk about all the techie stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And,
coming soon.
Yeah.
Back to this
that's
leadership management,
Yes,
dichotomy, this paradigm that we started with. We talked about management and having the ability to get something done. I did not provide you with a definition of leadership, but leadership is the one that has the vision of where things are supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's the difference between management and leadership. Leadership is looking down the road. They're the ones that's charting the course, if you will. You can refer to them as the captain of the ship. Now, just because you're not the head leader, that doesn't mean that you don't have a vision. So for every leader, so the leader can manage, but when he's in a management role, he's about the tactical day-to-day, making sure that things get done. When he's in the leadership role, he's looking and forecasting out of where we need to be. I think it was the great Wayne Gretzky. He made a statement, and there's a lot of people that quote him on this, but I'm just going to use it as a statement versus a quote. He said what made him so successful in hockey was he always skated to where the puck was going to be, not necessarily where it was.
Wow.
So he spent time anticipating where is this thing going to end up. And for us as a leader, that's one of the things that you must do. And it looks like you have a quote that you want to share as well.
I do. I was actually trying to figure out who said this, but it's anonymous. So I guess they didn't attribute it to anybody who
interesting.
Who actually, and that's actually exactly. The concept of team is like, they said you can accomplish more if you don't really care about who gets the credit, right? So I guess this is one of those quotes that, they just wanted to accomplish something.
Credit. They just wanted to accomplish.
But this one says true leaders always practice the 3 R's: respect for self, respect for others, and responsibility for all their actions. I even heard a president who said, the buck stops with me. Yep, yes. I heard one of our presidents say that.
One of the presidents say that.
The other thing I wanted to say that was actually I don't know who said this one either. The greatest leader is not necessarily the greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does great things or the greatest things. He is the one that gets people to do the greatest things.
That sounds like the quote that Jesus did. You want to be great?
That's right.
You want prestige?
Right, exactly.
You want recognition? Mm-hmm. Let them be your servant.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and you'll hear a lot of people talk about servant leadership, and that's why I said when I hear the term leadership,
mm-hmm.
I listen to those people who either supports it or don't support it. That lets me know if they understand, each component of leadership. And it looks like we're going to have to wrap this up.
Yep, we're out of time.
We could do this forever, pick this one up again.
Especially you talk to any good pastor about leadership, and he can go on and on and on and on.
And you know what? This wasn't even about pastoral leadership. This was about leadership at the office, because there's so many bad ones.
But that's the good thing about a good definition, because a good definition can be applied to many different formats and many different arenas.
That's true.
And leadership can be applied in so many different areas. It can be applied in family, because there's family leadership.
And we didn't talk. We have a show that's going to discuss family leadership and family dynamics.
That's right. Because we're going to talk about blended families. Yeah. So it can. We can talk about leadership in families. We can talk about leadership in the neighborhood, even. With things that have to happen, activism and all that stuff. Leadership in culture, leadership on the job, leadership in sports, leadership in music. There's so much that you can apply this concept of leadership to. So you want to make sure that any good definition that you have of leadership can really be applied. Here's another quote. This one is from Lisa.
Will that be the closing quote?
This is the closing quote.
I like Lisa Haisha.
Yeah.
And today you heard us talk about leadership and the dichotomy or the difference between management. And we're going to close out with this quote. And
she says,
we'll see you next time.
Great leaders don't set out to be a leader. They set out to make a difference. It's never about the role, always about the goal.
Oh, I thought she was going to say it's always about the people. But either way, I love that.
Well, sometimes the people are the goal.
The people are the goal, we know, but it's always about the goal. And I would have just used the word people, because it's always about the people. I am the pastor.
And I'm the prince.
Thank you for listening.